Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor and privilege to open up the panel on migration and border security. The title, New Challenges for Europe. This panel comes at the right time. It's an important topic, especially at the time when we have an ongoing war in Europe. So I'm glad that we start this day with this important topic. For the beginning, I would introduce myself. My name is Antun. I come from Croatia, Zagreb, Croatia, and work at the Institute for Development and International Relations, and we are partners of this event. And now I will introduce our speakers here. I will start with Minister of Interior of Moldova, Her Excellency Mrs. REVENCO. Then we have Minister of Interior from Romania, Mr. Lucian BODE. And last but not least, a Bulgarian Minister of Interior and Deputy Prime Minister, Ylva DEMERDZHIEV. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending this important event. As I said, the issue of migration sparked a lot of controversy in Europe in the last years. We remember the events of 2015 and the influx of Syrian migrants to Europe, mostly to Germany. And it sparked a lot of outcry throughout Europe how it was handled. Some countries were pro, and they were trying to entice the Syrian refugees, migrants to come to Europe. On the other side, we saw a lot of revolt and countries strongly opposing those initiatives, especially in the Visegrad countries. Then the crisis kind of evolved, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. There were, restrictions within Schengen were introduced again, and the liberty, the freedom of movement was blocked in many countries. So then again, we had this looming migrant crisis, and at the same time, we had, the restrictions, and the situation was pretty chaotic. At the same time, we still have this dispute within EU member states. Do we have to have more solidarity between the member states or more responsibility? So it's a big rift ongoing. And now, for the past 15 months, we have a terrible ongoing war against Ukraine. We saw a lot of influx of migrants, of refugees from Ukraine. And still we have this Turkish hub, and still we have the Mediterranean, the soft underbelly of Europe. So people tend to come from all parts around Europe to Europe. So this is a vital issue that we have to deal with. And the European Union is trying to resolve this problem. Now we have the case of Pact for Migration and Asylum, a new set of documents that's going to regulate this issue. We'll see whether the European Union, the European Commission, will be able to come up with some solid solutions, because for the past 10 years we only saw a big row and division among EU member states when it comes to migration and border security. Of course, we will discuss border security, especially, with the situation with Russia and the Russians trying to avoid, the sanctions regime and trying to get the materials they need for their campaign. But mentioning the pact for migration and asylum, I suggest that we now hear a few words in a pre-recorded message by Her Excellency Mrs. Ylva JOHANSSON, EU Commissioner for Home Affairs.
Good morning. Today you discuss new challenges. When we speak about new challenges, we must first of all speak about Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. 1 year ago, I was at the EU border. 4 days after the invasion started, I was in Romania at the Syrian border crossing. It was cold, it was snowing. I saw the long lines of women and children, tired, afraid, and freezing cold, not knowing what the future would bring, carrying their belongings in just one suitcase, sometimes with a dog or a cat. And there in Siret, I saw the greatest solidarity I've ever seen. Border guards, volunteers, authorities, society, united in solidarity, working round the clock, welcoming the refugees. Last week, I was again at the EU border on my way to Kiev. And again, I saw women and children. But now they were going to the other way, back to Ukraine. Now with smiles on their faces, carrying newly bought suitcases, queuing for the train. More and more are going back, showing resilience, determination, and belief in victory. We welcome millions and millions of Ukrainians into the European Union. 4 million Ukrainians are now here under the umbrella of the Temporary Protection Directive. It was a challenge, but we managed it. And Ukrainians seeking shelter will continue to be welcome in the European Union. War is a catastrophe for citizens, but an opportunity for criminals. Like traffickers of human beings who target vulnerable women and children for sexual exploitation. Right from the first days of the war, we took coordinated actions to protect victims and fight traffickers. As a result, there are now very few confirmed cases. Or organized criminals smuggling guns into the EU. Ukraine needs those weapons for defense against Russian aggression. Last week, I met in Kiev the Minister of Interior, Igor Klimenko. We are working closely with Ukraine, with Moldova, with Europol and Frontex to prevent weapons crossing the borders. And so far, successfully. There are no cases yet of firearms trafficked by organized crime. Ukraine is already now a trusted partner in law enforcement cooperation, taking part in 122 operational actions with Europol and member states under MPACT, the platform against criminal threats, last year. But the war brings new challenges to Ukrainian police. Many Ukrainian police officers and border guards are not only fighting crime, they are defending their country, and their job has changed. I met police officers who now identify victims after Russian rocket attacks, based on DNA tests of human remains, and who then have to tell a parent maybe that their child has died. This is our job nowadays, they told me. When I think of Ukraine, I think of one word: courage. And so we are supporting Ukraine. We are supporting Ukraine to deal with landmines, which affect 30% of the country. Ukrainian authorities have demined hundreds of thousands of explosives so far. But much more needs to be done. We are training Ukrainian personnel and are providing specially trained dogs to help the demining efforts. And we are supporting Ukraine to prosecute war crimes. Ukrainian authorities have discovered over 50 torture chambers in liberated territories. Thousands of children have been deported to Russia. Tens of thousands of war crime cases have been opened. We will do everything in our power to support the victims and bring the perpetrators to justice. And we are supporting Ukraine's European future. The Commission set out 7 steps before negotiations about accession can start. I'm impressed by how far Ukraine has come. We will do what it takes. European Union supports Ukraine all the way. On a final note, let me say, protecting our borders and managing migration is something we can only do together. And we can only do that with a fully functioning and complete Schengen area. This week, the Commission adopted the second State of Schengen report, showing progress, challenges, and priorities for the year ahead. I'm glad Croatia is a member now, but Romania and Bulgaria must now too join Schengen. Romania is ready. Bulgaria is ready. It's my priority for Romania and Bulgaria to join Schengen as soon as possible this year. This will only make us more prosperous and more secure. I wish you a very fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Nice words. And I'm particularly glad to hear the words about Croatia, because I'm coming to Croatia, and I can tell you this was a great moment for Croatia joining the Schengen. It eased our lives, and the citizens pretty much benefit, especially in a country like Croatia that is pretty much dependent upon tourism. At the same time, Croatia has introduced the euro, so I would say the year started well. And I also have to say that our minister, who was Minister of Interior, Mr. Božinović, who was pretty much involved in the administration of our Prime Minister Plenković, we were very much supportive, in support of Romania and Bulgaria, and we are not happy with the case that the Commissioner just mentioned, and we sincerely hope that the two countries, they're deserving to get into the Schengen area, and that is going to happen anytime soon during this year. Now, as we mentioned, Ukraine, I would suggest that we start with some questions with our panelists here. As mentioned, Ukraine to start with Moldova, so to have a round of few questions, and then we have some time for open discussion. So I will start with the Ministry of Interior of Moldova, Mrs. Minister REVENCO. So the question is, as we mentioned, Ukraine. A lot of people were saying, especially last year, you know, thank God it's not the scenario this year anymore, with the Ukrainians fight back and even taking initiative in the front, which is beautiful news for everyone in Europe. But last year there was a lot of talk that Moldova is going to be the target, the next target after Ukraine. Do you still perceive this threat, and concerning the borders, are Moldovan borders secure?
Good morning, bună dimineața. Dear colleagues, we've been quite firm from the very first day, and it has only confirmed throughout the months that followed after Russia invaded Ukraine that the target is the democracy in Europe. The target is the well-being of Europeans. Russia only has the interest of regaining the control and influence over the Republic of Moldova in order to exercise pressure and demand, gain possible negotiation tools. That is their only interest in the Republic of Moldova. And throughout the last almost 14 months, we are seeing how hybrid manifestations have affected the spirit of not only Moldovans, but also of all the Europeans. Nevertheless, the Rest opinion poll dated April is showing that almost 60% of Moldovans affirmed pro-Europeans. But I would like to also give you a wider picture that I hope will answer the question if our borders are quite secure. And in order to make it easier for all of you to understand what are the current challenges related to border security and migration, it is important to understand the context. It has been mentioned by you from the very beginning that we've been going through some crises altogether like COVID, but what is important to understand that the difference from the current overlapping multiple long-going crises as compared to the previous one is the timing, the quick unfolding of the events. I'll give you one example. Palanca is the most solicited border crossing point with Ukraine. Before the war, the processing capacity based on the request was maximum 1,000 of Ukrainians a day. Now, we had to be prepared to process this kind of numbers in just 1 hour. By the end of the day, it increases to 16,000. Now try to multiply that with another 17 border crossing points that Moldova has with Ukraine. On the top of that, add the time needed to cross the eastern border with Ukraine with the western border with Romania, meaning the EU border. You should be aware that the longest distance is about 120 kilometers and the shortest is 3 kilometers. This means, in terms of our capabilities and response, that we have from 5 to maximum 45 minutes to be prepared to respond to whatever is happening at the border. Now we have to also consider the complexity of the migration flows. Not all the Ukrainians were ready to take this trip, to take this path, road. Many of them were absolutely unprepared. We had absolutely impressive number of refugees having no proper documents, unaccompanied children, families without documents at all necessary for crossing the border. At the same time, there was a great will to protect, to offer shelter, to fulfill all the obligations with regard to the human rights, and at the same time, be in charge with the security at the border. What we have learned from the very first day is that we need to adapt to the real-life dynamics. So we've been adjusting our contingencies plan on the daily basis, based on what we are seeing in the field. It is also important for us was in parallel to collect, process, translate this data and share with our partners seeking support. Because when we are speaking about Moldovan borders, and just imagine in your minds the map of the European Union, the size of Moldova with regard with these figures means that we have to synchronize all our actions and act as a very well coordinated and organized border crossing point for EU. We needed to adapt to various templates that various countries, organizations, programs have been requesting from us. That meant a huge pressure on all the teams managing the external support and the international cooperation. It is also important, and I would like to share with you the information about the general context that was existing in Moldova when the war started and when we started to receive this kind of migration flows and situation at the borders. Since February 24th, it meant the aggressive beginning of the hybrid war in the Republic of Moldova. First, it started with wide spreading and dissemination of fake news that infused huge level of panic, distrust among the population. And the more Republic of Moldova stood up for Ukraine, for democracy, for rule of law, the more hybrid manifestations were manifesting, with energy blackmail leading later to blackouts, disruption of food chain supply and causing long queues and putting a huge unprecedented pressure on our borders. That also means challenge, including from the security perspectives. Organization of unlawful protests, blocking roads and communities, not only for one weekend, one day, but 4 months in a row, including engagement of specially trained and recruited people that were sent in to provoke violence. Use of media outlets aiming for polarization and radicalization of population, disinformation, including life-threatening scenarios for politicians, digital and physical letters sent to institutions and staff aimed to encourage them to disobey the orders. Despite all of those actions, like I mentioned, it was never a threat to our will to stand to our democratic objective and stay on our European path. What really helped us is the agreement with Frontex that we managed to negotiate in just 7 days, and now we have Frontex specialists not only at our western borders, but as of this year, they mixed up with our border police and stand at our eastern border. Now you can imagine that means that the security area and the security borders of the European Union have already extended, and Moldova is already becoming part of the ecosystem of security in Europe. Referring to the instrumentalization of migration, and we have to talk about this also as a challenge, because we've seen how Russia instrumentalized energy, food, democracy. Migration is also seen as part of the tools that Russia is using to exercise pressure. And we've already started to share with our partners information regarding the initiation of aerial routes from Turkey, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, from Armenia, from Georgia, for persons with nationalities from various continents, marriages of convenience, gaining access to the countries, not only to the Republic of Moldova, use of counterfeit ID documents, including from EU member states, use of multiple citizenship, developing of polycriminal networks, running weapon and munition trafficking, smuggling in persons, and luxury goods. And last but not least, information about persons representing paramilitary organizations. And yes, we do have to speak about new forms of extremism when we talk about security at the borders. We've put together a set of measures that helped us control the situation at our borders and also provide this way the security into the region. We've created special security profiles that are activated on a daily basis and that allows us to profile any attempts to enter the country of people who are rather intended to be part of destabilization actions. We've developed special standard operational procedures meant to prevent cases of children, women trafficking. We've created mobile teams and changed the model of operations that before the war we used to work in silos, and right now we are working on objective-based approach. We have, as I said, Frontex specialists with us, but of course we're also implementing new innovative approaches such as information exchange based on an early warning mechanism on the security hub, but also implement new models of security checks and border management, like the recent one we did with Romania by implementation of the coordinated control regime at one of the most solicited border crossing points the Republic of Moldova has with Romania. What is needed in the future, and that would be my last contribution, I would like to also invite all the participants to take that with you back home and start thinking how can we all contribute to that. First and foremost, we need to review the crisis procedures all together, not only in silos, not only within our countries or within our systems. We need to look beyond the quantitative indicators. We've been sharing a lot of information, but we've been in the same time asked, but do you have cases? How many cases? Are they serious cases? But that means a reactive approach. That means that we are yet there to expect for the bad things to happen and only after we take action. That means costs, not only financial, that means moral costs, but that also means that we allow Russia to get consolidated and we are not attacking their costs. We should have a much better shaped critical thinking on plausible futures, on foresight analysis. Reports with actual numbers means, like I said, that we are reactive to the phenomena that already are attacking our systems and our citizens. For this reason, for over 1 year, with every chance we had, we advocated for joint analytical and working groups that would include professionals, decision makers, politicians. Working in silos is no longer valid, and we need to increase the level of that engagement. We have to go beyond exchange of information and develop common risk indicators. And when I say common, again, think outside the borders of your systems, think outside the borders of your country. Early warning mechanism with regard to the threats that could affect the security of the borders of the neighboring country, of the region as a whole, is now the right approach to think about how can we all secure the region. For 1 year now, over 1 year now, we've been building new ways of ensuring security in the country by including and engaging all the institutions with the mandate on security, home affairs, intelligence, cyber, technology, and defense. Integrated approach is the approach that must be now integrated into the all-European approach to secure the borders and to secure our area. This is the only way that we could protect the entire continent against the Russian aggression. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. REVENCO. Adding up to what you just said, and actually what your colleague, Minister Lucian, said yesterday, he stated that Moldova imports 0 cubic meters of gas from Russia, which is an amazing effort, and it happened within a year or so. But still we have to talk about the breakaway province of Transnistria or Pridnestrovye. Do you think that Russia, considering the amount of trade and support for the breakaway province, can use Transnistria to evade the European sanctions, to get the materials they need, to get through the borders and to get it to Russia, because they are highly dependent on materials from the West, not the other way around. And in this respect, which kind of support from the European Union could you expect to secure borders and to prevent Russia from evading the EU sanctions, regime of sanctions?
I would like to have my dear colleague, Minister Parlikov, with me to tell you a little bit more about the way we build our energy independence, which means that we are becoming less and less dependent from the pressures from Russia, and that also means that we support Ukraine and increase Russia's cost in this war. The sanctions refer to the crude oil, which Moldova is not using, is not importing. We are not having refineries. The gas that comes from Russia is necessary to avoid a humanitarian crisis in the left bank. And that is exactly the lens through which we understand and we approach the stability in the country. We now buy gas on the open market, and in terms of understanding how the open market is accessed by Russia in terms of delivering gas, that's a collective exercise and a collective effort that we all have to understand how to decrease, how to cut off Russia's access to the open market so that none of the countries are in a situation to take the full burden of imposing and continuing and following the respect of those sanctions. Speaking within the borders of the Republic of Moldova, we view the stability in the Transnistrian region as a necessary component to keep the stability not only in the country but also in the region. It is right now the way to secure also safety in the region, and will always be the exchange of information with our partners with regard to the way we participate in the energy market.
Thank you. Thank you for the inspiring words in a country which is so important for European security and that has attracted so much attention. Now we'll go for the south to Bulgaria. We'll have a few questions for Minister DEMERDZHIEV. First of all, I suggest that we switch to channel 3 because Minister will speak in Bulgarian. To start with a couple of questions. Bulgaria borders Turkey, a major hub with millions of migrants. How is Bulgaria coping with this fact and the fact that you're on the vital migrant route, and which mechanism, which support from the European Union would you see and consider, especially in the light of the fact that we unfortunately mentioned that Bulgaria was again stopped from joining the Schengen?
Dear participants in the forum today, I will give you first the picture at the Bulgarian-Turkish border. You must know that it's the most heavy land border more than 68 attempts were made last year to cross the territory of Bulgaria. The pressure increased by 30%. And in a while I will explain what we are doing. We reached a better efficiency. And this increase of 30%, actually, against this background, we have less migrants who are on our territory. The work on irregular migration will continue to be up to date, to be a very topical issue. The war in Ukraine will have its impact. The food crisis also impacts the situation with the migrants, especially the grain chain. We need to expect flows from North Africa regarding the food chain supply. The first pillar is to cooperate with the countries of origin and countries of transit. The European Commission already realizes the importance of this dialogue. The most secure way to prevent the migrants in an effective way is to enhance and support the cooperation with these countries. The second place is for the effective border protection and control. The Commission and the other EU member states, this topic was part of the many council meetings. The Commission demonstrates very apparently that it realizes the importance of effective and secure protection of borders. The Bulgarian-Turkish border is a priority for the Commission. We need to clearly understand that the efforts should be focused on the external borders, because if we don't do that, we'll contradict to the values that the EU has. For instance, the restoration of reinstatement of borders of the EU is not a good thing. We cooperate with Turkey, and we try to actually convince more countries, EU member states, to join the work that we have together with Turkey. Starting with the relations between the two presidents of Bulgaria and Turkey, we have very close contacts with Turkey. There are several mechanisms, working mechanisms, border and customs control, commission in which there are representatives of different institutions from both countries. This is a structure that I believe will give and gives good results. There is very good cooperation. And in parallel to this center, we established bilateral intergovernmental committee between Bulgaria and Turkey, which deals with two kinds of issues: better, more efficient control of borders, and it controls the work of at the BCPs regarding the traffic of persons and the passage of vehicles. The results are very good. With the assistance that we have from the Turkish side, which deploys vast number of forces at the border, this helps us a lot with coping with irregular migration. As I said, during the first 4 months, Bulgaria actually allows on its territory very few migrants and prevents secondary movements. We put a lot of effort to technically equip the border. We are glad to have the support of the Commission, and we hope that it will increase. We are active in working with Frontex. And the third pillar regarding the fight against irregular migration is actually the fight against criminal organized groups and more particularly smuggling of migrants. We initiated the creation of a targeted operational task force together with Europol to deal with the smuggling of migrants. In this regard, Bulgaria actually created the core of the committee. It actually gathered all persons competent in this matter of smuggling, not only from the Ministry of Interior. We set up an operational center, and we expect representatives of Europol to join. And then I will invite, and I hope that other EU member states, including Serbia, Turkey, will join this group. Our aim is to cover the territory of whole of Europe, because for us, security, stability in the region depends on not only the security of the EU, but the whole territory of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Minister, just to add up shortly on what you just said, you also mentioned Serbia. Bulgaria borders Serbia, and Serbia is on the vital part of the migrant route. How do you cooperate with the country that Serbia is, considering the fact that they're still far from becoming a member of the European Union, with a strong Russian influence and a big division in the society between, the pro-Russian sort of feelings and the European, sort of say, ambitions, and the country that, as you see, was at the core of this migrant crisis. We also saw a few weeks ago mass shootings in schools, 2,000 people killed, students in schools, and now the government of Serbia is trying to introduce new measures. They're collecting, weapons like assault rifles and handguns from the citizens. So the country is still, in terms of security, pretty vulnerable. It's exposed to Russian influence. On top of it, you have this migrant crisis. So how can Bulgaria assist and cooperate closely with Serbia to ease this pressure of migrant crisis? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. It's really an interesting one. the behaviors of Serbia has been changing in a positive direction. Even in the past year, since I have observations on the whole process, at the beginning of my mandate in August last year, Serbia was a blank spot on the migrants' map. Now we cooperate very actively, even more actively. We notice very good cooperation between European Commission and Serbia, and I will start with the visa-free regime of Serbia, which changed, and it was a result of the targeted efforts of the Commission. Serbia actually introduced visa-free regimes with Burundi, Cuba and similar countries, which generated a huge number of migrants who arrived in a regular way to Serbia, and after that they flowed into other countries on the territory of EU, and the most affected was Austria. After amending the visa-free regime and aligning this regime with the EU policy, we have the prerequisite to decrease the migrant flows. The second steps we took was an active dialogue with Serbia. Two types of measures we take: joint Frontex operations together with Serbia between the Bulgaria-Serbian border and near the border along the two sides on the two territories. Next is to prevent the secondary movements. We allow very few migrants on our territory, but at the same time we make the best to prevent their further movement to the other countries in Europe. In this case, we have very good cooperation with Serbia, with the active cooperation of Frontex. A number of measures, a number of actions are taken, activities are made possible there in this regard. Similarly to the working group with Turkey, we actually negotiated a similar group with Serbia, which is to be set up soon. Such a coordination mechanism, I believe, will help us better and more effectively cope with the irregular movements at this border, where the attempts actually are less compared to the attempts at the Turkish border. But Bulgaria has taken the engagement and is determined to actually fulfill the engagement it took. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Your interesting words and for intervention. Now we'll shift to the host country, to Romania, Minister of Interior, Lucian. A couple of questions for you. Romania, with Bulgaria and Croatia, was expected to join the Schengen last year, and it came to us as also in Croatia as a surprise. And Croatia was also sort of anxious. We did not know until mid-December was going to be sure that Croatia was going to join. Eventually, luckily, we did join, but there was the blockade coming from Austria. Austria blocked your entrance. What are your feelings about this? How is Romania coping with this? Because we sort of felt that you deserved to join the Schengen. You've implemented the right measures, and you've been a member for 16 years now. So how is Romania coping with the decision, and when do you perceive that eventually you will join the Schengen? Thank you.
Good morning. First of all, I would like to wish you a warm welcome to Bucharest and in Romania. Before answering your question, I should say that it's a difficult topic for Romania, and I would also like to make some remarks with regard to these very important issues proposed on the agenda of this forum. Ministers, distinguished guests, first of all, I would like to thank you for being present here at this event and for having answered our invitation to join this panel. I'm glad to see you at the 7th edition of this forum, an event which is a landmark of high-level debate on the topic of security in the Black Sea and Balkan region. First of all, allow me to salute the presence here of my Bulgarian and Moldavian counterparts and to thank Commissioner for the Interior, Mrs. Ylva JOHANSSON, for the message she conveyed to us on this occasion. Given the current international context, I cannot see a more proper place to discuss about security at our borders. Romania occupies a special place in the regional and European security architecture, and this forum is an excellent platform for high-level strategic dialogue between experts. And I am fully confident that through this dialogue and through an exchange of expertise, we will contribute to a better understanding of the challenges and threats we're faced with. And we will also set a proper background for finding solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, we are faced with a series of critical events to the international peace, security and stability. We have to admit that over the last decades we were confronted with situations that happened in a more favorable context to discussing about security issues or migration and border management aspects. So nowadays all these problems are overlapping and they are trying our institutions, and they also come with a whole lot of opportunities that we as politicians should like to transform and make fruitful. So I invite you to see the glass half full and to not let the lessons learned from this crisis go to waste. And I would like to touch upon a few of these lessons learned. The world order and the security international ecosystems that we were accustomed to, lasting from the end of the Cold War, has underwent a series of cascading transformations, and many of them are major ones. There's no doubt there. However, if we manage to go beyond the emotional aspects of this period, we see we have a window of opportunity allowing us to review strategic concepts and to make bold political decisions in order to increase our capacity and availability to act for more security in Europe in the spirit of security and solidarity in order to consolidate our resiliency for future challenges. Secondly, when we speak about migration and border security challenges, I consider that we should look at the Balkans and the Black Sea region as an area whose security reverberates well beyond its geographic borders. It is an area where we see a continuous strategic competition that exceeds the competencies of the following the unjust and unjustified Russian aggression against Ukraine. Nowadays, the stake of the security challenges in the region is higher. The border security and stabilities are two very closely intertwined topics, and they are also to be placed in the context of the strategic challenges we are faced with and to the geopolitical transformations in the region of the Black Sea and of the Balkans. If we add to all that growing political instability, the migration flows, this overlapping crisis, such as armed conflicts and the political instrumentalization of migration, we see that the picture is quite complicated. Now, coming to the topics we've just discussed within this panel. Migration. We should understand what's going on in our region. Without understanding, we cannot act, and we should act at European level. I've already said that migration, especially illicit one, is an European problem, and it requires comprehensive and coordinated solution. There is not one single responsible party and not one single guilty party either. We need measures to regulate migration under all its aspects. It's not at all easy, and there's no miracle solution. However, if we want to move forward, it is important for our internal and external actions to complete one another. The external part is essential, and I'm saying this as clearly as possible. Our main objective should be to prevent illicit migration towards the European Union, and we have an important role in that. The Black Sea and Balkans region is essential since this is a transit area, not a final destination point. So we should place the accent on fighting against the causes, real causes of migration. We should strengthen the management of this phenomenon at its very source. At its very source, I underline that. Otherwise, we will fail. Now, with regard to Romania, I see here representatives from most states within this region. Romania is actively involved in efforts to cut down illicit migration. However, our efforts should be doubled up by efforts made by the EU if we want to have maximum efficiency. And I take this opportunity to underline the fact that we are actively involved in implementing the EU action plan for the Western Balkans and for the implementation of the operational measures taken in February of this year. As you well know, we've joined the pilot project at the border with Serbia, proposed by the European Commission, in order to convey a clear signal of our commitment to manage all migration-created challenges. Our intention was to export and put to good use our best practices all throughout Europe, but also to show that the concrete results of this pilot project could serve as a valuable inspiration source for other European partners. We have proved once more that Romania has brought a valuable contribution to the European and regional security architecture. There's a long series of proofs of Romania's contribution to this topic. But our efforts have not been met up by a counterparty. I regretfully say that our access to Schengen was blocked, and I would like to clearly state here that with regard to stability and security in Europe, it's not natural. It's not normal that some member states have only to meet their obligations and not enjoy their the rights that are rightfully theirs. We should call a spade with regard to migration. Although we've made progress within the EU, the challenges stemming from illegal migration are still here, and they require more efficient solutions. Therefore, we should continue with our efforts to better negotiate the provisions in the asylum and migration agreement. We need to have a balance between solidarity and accountability or responsibility. There's the key, especially for the states in this region. It is extremely important to be able to reach a compromise capable to satisfy everyone's interests according to their specific situations. And this balance should be visible and applicable to all member states in accordance with their specific geographic situation and to their specificities. As things stand now, I'm confident that we can reach balanced solutions, both with regard to solidarity and to accountability, because in the end, what we all want is to build a system to manage migration and asylum, a system adapted to current challenges, to present challenges. Moving forward and accepting that migration as a current phenomenon has multiple causes, I also think that the time has come to reflect to how to better adapt the original legal documents regulating this phenomenon, for them to take into account current realities. But this is not enough. We shouldn't stop here. We should frame this discussion within a wider picture. Actions taken with regard to migration need to be completed with a more efficient approach at the border. We have to have an efficient control at our borders. We should be able to constantly monitor global trends and evolutions and to be able to have a proactive response to these challenges. We need to put forth a stronger operational response adapted to the current risks and threats. And allow me to go into detail a little bit. Ensuring our border security and an efficient management of the migration phenomena can only be done through a coordinated effort at national, regional and European level. This effort supposes to work together at the level of the member states and of the EU agencies and bodies. We also need to be aware that the protection of our borders is a target that can be reached through European efforts and through national efforts by consolidating the cooperation with neighboring countries. And last but not least, we should also focus on combating second-hand migration. We need to understand how the migration flows have changed so that we may be able to prevent in a timely manner, because otherwise we will have a hard time facing the challenges ahead. It's been a year and a couple of months since the Russian aggression against Ukraine, an irrational act whose consequences are felt by all of us, especially more so by our neighboring partners. Despite this evolution, we've managed to show all the strengths that we have in solidarity and the way we could support our partners in their efforts they make. In conclusion, I would like to say a few words about the Republic of Moldova. Romania and the Republic of Moldova have had long-standing special relationships, and the efforts made the last 2 years allowed us to build together, thanks to the efforts of the minister here, to build a very close cooperation, and an efficient one, I may say. And I take this opportunity to convey a firm message to the Republic of Moldova. We will continue to stand by you through the efforts you make, endeavoring to go through this crisis and to fight the hybrid pressures that your republic is subjected to. I will stop here, expressing my hopes that the fact that so many experts are present here is a clear commitment to security in the Black Sea and Balkans region. Now, I would like to answer the questions our moderator asked me with regard to the decision of the 8th of December in the JAI Council, when Austria quite unjustly, unprincipled and unnatural vetoed the adoption of the project to expand the Schengen area to Romania and Bulgaria.
This decision has upset us here in Romania, and you've seen the public reactions. However, Romania considers that the main diplomatic weapon should be used once again, namely dialogue. In consequence, since January until April 2023, we restarted our dialogue with Austria and had 3 bilateral meetings with the Minister of Home Affairs in Austria, the last one on the 26th of April here in Bucharest. We had technical meetings between police officers and customs officers and border officers. And if it comes to fulfilling all the Schengen acquis demands, I think we managed to fulfill them. Romania has accelerated a consistent dialogue with Spain as well, because Spain will take over the presidency of the EU as of 1st of July this year. So it was our pleasure to welcome here in Bucharest His Excellency Grande Marlaska, the Ministry of Home Affairs in Spain. So, with that occasion, Minister of the Interior in Spain emphasized that Romania's and Bulgaria's accession to the Schengen area will be a priority of Spain's presidency. And we also continued our good collaboration with the Commission, and I was very glad to hear Mrs. Ylva Johansson, who said that for the EU Commission, the accession to the Schengen area of both Romania and Bulgaria is a priority. And the pilot project I mentioned in my speech, agreed and signed with the Commission, a pilot project focusing on good practice of the Home Affairs Ministry at the border between Romania and Serbia was signed. Romania has restarted a dialogue with all member states that granted us the vote of trust. All those countries that showed their trust in us, including Croatia, because Croatia has become a Schengen area member. All those countries continued their dialogue with us, and I was even invited by Croatia to Zagreb by my counterparty at the Ministry of the Interior. So we continued our constant dialogue with all countries, and discussing with these countries, I noticed that they didn't change their position, and if we have a new round of discussion this year, a new JAI, they will stand by us, because Romania is part of the solution, not of the problem. Thank you.
I sincerely hope you will manage under the Spanish presidency to reach your goal, which you so much deserve, and the same goes for Bulgaria. I will now open a really short window of opportunity for for discussion. So maybe just a few questions, and please make it short, and I also ask you to have short answers. So I see 3 hands. So let's start now. Please make it short.
Dana Alexandra Scherle from Deutsche Welle, Germany. A question for Mrs. Revenco. We were all very impressed by the solidarity your country has shown towards the refugees. You have taken in more refugees per capita in relation to the number of your population than any other country in Europe, which I really want to express my whole admiration for this. It's very impressive. You showed a positive example for all of Europe, for Western Europe as well. The question is, how do you deal with this economically? How do you manage to take care of all these people? Because you have such a high inflation of 34%, as Dorin Recean, your Prime Minister, stressed yesterday, and rising energy costs in this whole context of the war? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for the words of support. Indeed, in order to make the figures speak, I'll give you an example. In just 1 month, we had to organize perfectly synchronized actions from all institutions, both at central and local level, in order to make possible to offer decency for the Ukrainians that I mentioned 1 month about the figures. Imagine that you have in your country appearing the second largest city. This is what means this figure of refugees for us. The second largest city in Moldova, which needs decency. That is the challenge for us. And the key support action came first from the civil population. The Ukrainians are now part of our communities, are part of our homes. They're part of our response to the crisis. 24% of the civil population, on a voluntary basis, unconditionally, responded to the crisis. In just the first hours when the Russian aggression started over the Ukraine, we had over 20 kilometers of queue of Moldovans at the most solicited border crossing points, queuing to offer support, offering food, clothes, medications, and offering the keys from their houses. And that is the strongest pillar of the national response. And your question, how do we handle that? First is the civil population, the Moldovans, that back up the response plan. The second largest contribution comes from you, from our partners. On the Solidarity Platform, an initiative launched by Germany, France, and Romania, support from countries all over the world, from countries that live in democracy and open world. Moldova has benefited and has been able to go through a very important winter. The compensation that went into the bill for heating comes due to the support that Moldova benefited from the primarily European countries. We continue to benefit of this assistance in order to increase the resilience of the authorities, of the institutions, in order to accommodate the needs not only of the refugees, but also of the Moldovans, because, as I said, they are part of our communities. We've activated a temporary protection plan in February, and all the activities reflected in the temporary protection plan are being discussed, coordinated, and supported, including financially, in partnership with the European member states and with the international organizations. And the way this support is being coordinated right now gives me more than faith, but firmity that we will be able to address any other possible crisis, including with regard to a possible wave of refugee in the near future.
Thank you so much. I believe we're coming to the end of this interesting discussion. A lot of interesting questions has been raised. So this could really go on for an indefinite time. I would now suggest that just a short question from my side to conclude just in 1 minute, and then I'll ask you to once again for our chairman to take the floor. So just a short question, considering that the fact Romania is a major hub of defending Europe along with Poland in the face of Russian aggression. How secure are your external borders and the borders of the EU?
Vă mulțumesc pentru întrebare.
Thank you for your question. As you well know, Romania is managing the longest EU external border, 2,070 kilometers of border. So we are in the forefront of protecting the external borders of the EU, and we are also protecting the citizens of the EU through our borders and through the Romanian structures and institutions, through the structures of the Ministry of the Interior. We are adopting the strictest rules in protecting the borders, in securing them. And I would only like to present some figures. On a daily basis, our structures within the Ministry of the Interior are operating with 26,000 forces, 4,000 border police officers. So more than 4,000 border police officers are on a daily basis there at the borders, plus gendarmerie, the Romanian police, and the Inspectorate for Immigration. At the same time, within our country, because you need to know that until now, we mentioned, and Minister REVENCO mentioned, the crisis of refugees. In Romania, more than 4.3 million Ukrainian refugees entered the country, and 100,000 citizens remained on our territory. Since the 24th of February 2022, we granted more than 140,000 temporary stay permits, and the expenses with accommodation and food for the refugees exceeded to 150 million euros. So this is the dimension of our country's involvement in the protection of the EU borders, external borders, and in ensuring all conditions for the Ukrainian refugees. But not only we are not protecting our external borders and the EU borders, not only since the war in Ukraine started. We invested more than 1 billion euros since our accession to the EU in professional training and professional equipment for border security. And because we are applying all Schengen acquis conditionalities, but unfortunately we are not benefiting from the rights that are rightfully ours. We are only fulfilling our obligations. So we are standing as guards at the borders of the EU, and because of us, the EU is safe. Thank you.
Minister BODE, thank you so much for your contribution and for the contribution of Romania to the security of Europe. And now, last but not least, I would kindly invite you to take the floor and address us with a few words, considering the great occasion that we have here and the distinction to be awarded to the new strategy center. Thank you, Minister, please.
Vă mulțumesc pentru această invitație, pentru această oportunitate.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you. We are at the 7th edition of this forum.
Vă mărturisesc că în momentul în care organizatorii au ales
I confess that when the organizers decided to give to home affairs such attention, I told myself that it's for the first time since the forum was first organized that home affairs were given such an importance. Therefore, we decided to give an award, the highest award that the Minister of the Interior can give. Our honorary badge. So the Romanian state, through the Ministry of the Interior, is giving this special badge. Thank you, dear Minister. It's an honor to receive this token of gratitude. I am glad that I could organize the first panel dedicated to home affairs. So, since it has such a success, I promise you we will continue this tradition and we will continue to dedicate a panel to home affairs. Yesterday, we also discussed with your colleagues from the ministry the opportunity to expand the debate in your area of interest, because it's an area of interest for all of us, but for the entire region as well. And I want to thank you for the fact that you got involved in Patriot Fest and you even attended personally that event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Nisu. Minister Bode and all speakers today and all participants for the beautiful conversation, and congratulations once again. Thank you.